Magma sorceries. They might be my favorite school of spells in all of Elden Ring, with I suppose the exception of whatever magic Glintblade is. Due to high FP costs, small hitboxes, delayed threat, slow startup speed, and an abysmal staff, these spells struggle to excel even in the realm of asynchronous pressure, area denial, and overall utility, at least when used at mid-level and below. Although you can get cast speed and mind investment at meta, the invasions will push the spells to their absolute limit, in what can only be described as pitiful, really. But with some other sorceries carefully chosen to cover the gaping holes in your strategy, you can polish the Gelmir hexes to a shine. Before I get into this, I'm asking you all a question that I want an answer to, preferably by scrolling down into the comments section and typing it out for me to read with my oh-so-shitty eyes. What interesting synergies have you found between the magma sorceries and other aspects of the game? Are there any weapon classes or builds that you think they particularly complement? I imagine the usual offenders of balance, like heavy thrusting swords, halberds, and thrusting swords, are particularly strong, but then the question remains, do you go int faith for the variety and for the incantations, or do you go all in on int for damage? You do only need 18 faith for Rykard's Rancor. So that's all I want to know. Maybe I overlooked something. I already found that the beast incants synergize well with magma, but they synergize with everything. In what invasion contexts have you found magma sorceries to be useful, and on what builds? I'll give you a minute here to pause me, F11 your full screen, take a break from listening to my sexy voice, I know it's hard, and leave a comment with your answer. Okay, on with the magma. And now I will do what must be done for the sake of completion. I will show and explain my work with the most basic form of this build, the rune level 125 variant. I know, my mid-level invader contemporaries are probably hissing at the screen right now, but please, just stay with me. Now, I don't normally like to do this sort of thing because I think it's fairly pointless, since if you're making a build similar to this, you're going to have to go in and change it to suit your needs. But the reason I'm including this is also for my sake, so that if somebody cleverer than I can take a look at this and maybe tweak some things, maybe you could offer a suggestion. I am not infallible. In fact, I'm the first to admit that I could easily be wrong about things. So do, please, let me know. This should look pretty standard by this point. Azur's is self-explanatory, the Magma Sorceries need the cast speed, and then we're gonna even slap the Gelmir staff on there for that 15% boost. I am using the Green Turtle Talisman. It is extremely important for me in my playstyle. I like to always have stamina ready so that I can keep casting. If I were to switch something off, it would be to the Bull Goats to increase the hyper armor on Shatter Earth. As you can see, even at meta, this is quite stat tight. I only have 51 vigor, and one of those points is from my headpiece. I really need to have the 38 mind because I need the points badly, and 70 int because with the plus 10 int physic we can hit the 80 soft cap. Yes, that leaves us with less health than most meta builds, but not by too much, and also our Estus is only going to refill so much of that anyway. We're not running a whole lot of regen, so it's not entirely necessary. We are single-mindedly focused on making the Magma Sorceries as good as possible. I did at one point use Godfrey's icon to try and make a fully charged Magma Shot deal a lot of damage, but turns out that you really need to be able to cast uncharged Magma Shot fairly often, and it doesn't benefit you at all if you're not fully charging your spells. And speaking of the spells, I ran a configuration something like this. I didn't add Shatter Earth until much later, so you may not see that in some clips, and sometimes I used Eternal Darkness, but it was so rare that I found it useful that I took it off. There's nothing particularly secret going on in the fashion here either, I just kind of like the way this looks. And the consumables I was just messing around with for the most part. But they're not the star of the show here, the Magma Sorceries are. Let's begin with the unfortunate reality. No, the Magma spells on their own do not fully cover all invasion and dueling scenarios equally well. Shocking information, I know, definitely not something that's ever been said before by anyone. Your mileage may vary due to latency. Magma spells are especially vulnerable to the additional invincibility on laggy rolls, and Magma Shot's splash box is not nearly as generous as Giant's Flame. Alright, say it with me. Free Aim Magma Shot is a respectable fireball. This spell inflicts your opponent with damage level 3. That's 35 frames, or 1 1/6 second. It comes out a touch slowly, but not slower than a colossal weapon. Not by much. In order for any of this to work, you have to trust and believe in the power of Magma Shot as one of your core, go-to neutral and footsies spells. It's also a powerful punish and leaves damage-dealing, poise-siphoning lava, which can also touch poise on phantom hits. This will be a bread-and-butter spell, and I would not move it any further than the 3rd slot. Every slot back you move it makes it less accessible, and you might cast Magma Shot 3 to 4 times in a row before changing your mind. These will be locked-off shots, aiming in the general direction of your opponent's movement, something you can practice and improve at. You have the freedom to aim Magma Shot in whichever direction you so desire up until the projectile fires. Your most common angular redirection will be back to front or pivoting 180 degrees as a turn and burn style with punish. Now, it won't solve every problem, and you can be interrupted rather easily if you initiate the cast from poor spacing, but that's what the other spells are for. As stated in a previous video of mine that I will link below, Roiling Magma is an animation mix-up with Magma Shot. If Roiling Magma does strike a hitbox, you can be well assured that it will do most, if not all, of their available health. Problem? It's the most expensive spell in your kit, by a good margin. Which means that you are quite limited on how many of these you can have in one invasion, without killing anyone first. As a side note, it's because of this spell and Rykard's Rancor that I'm guzzling Starlight Shards, and all that really amounts to is an extra Magma Shot or Gravity Well here and there, as to not be completely defenseless. With just 2 Roiling Magmas, you can connect 2 points in space by threat and then move between them. However, Roiling Magma's most useful feature is in its corner clearing and defensive approaching power, which is a long-winded way of saying that it is an invader's spell through and through. When your sightlines are dubious, you can toss a Roiling Magma into the next room, or against a wall, floor, or ceiling, and then move into the space covered by the eventual explosion, more or less safely. Now, it's not completely free, and it doesn't give you any cover until it actually explodes, so you're going to want to use it alongside Rykard's Rancor. Rykard's Rancor is good and unusual enough to be placed on any build that can withstand its odd 40 int 18 faith requirement. In fact, we're hitting 18 faith on this build explicitly for this spell. Everything about it is an investment for future payout. It takes 2 spell slots, costs a fair bit, but once it's up in the air, things change. The trajectory of the spell is not easy to predict as it is made by the lock-on target. Locked off, it will follow one of several patterns, often straight into the ground or off into the air, so it's best to stay locked on for this one, unless you're threading it through a doorway. Once finished, the newly created zone made by Rykard's Rancor is unique to the movement of your opponent and must be treated differently each time. Luckily for you, the explosions are large, numerous, and luminous. Rykard's Rancor will flashbang the entire enemy team, your co-invaders, and best of all, you. PC players be warned that your GPU may be crying with repeat casts of this, and I would recommend trying at least 2 or 3 casts, if you have the time and space to do so. If your opponents are not near you quite yet, pull them in. If they are, Magma Shot or Gelmir's Fury, or Shatter Earth, or whatever you like really. I believe harassing with repeat Magma Shots is best. As a surprise to no one, least of all myself, Shatter Earth can be good, actually, which is not shocking. We've done a build and a video on this. The Gyromancer used Shatter Earth, cancelled into Stone of Geraint to do good things, and the same is almost true of Shatter Earth and Magma Shot. You might have to unlock after the Shatter Earth to free aim, as a locked-on Magma Shot rarely connects if you've stunned them with Shatter Earth. This is another spell that should be within your first 3 spell slots, as it will be the primary source of hyper armor, and a good means of trading when you need to get someone off you. You can also use it like a pin, for trapping someone within a series of Rykard's Rancor explosions should they have wandered into it. Any build that properly employs gravity magic, or even the Ashes of War, can effectively shrink the space you inhabit down by a decent chunk. You can reset chasedown scenarios. You can pull players off ledges. You can pull players into your danger zone. But most importantly, you can adjust your opponent's spacing without moving yourself. I can't tell you how many times making a very tiny alteration to someone's position with Gravity Well has advantaged me. The reason you can do this now is because of the Azure Staff, greatly accelerating the sluggish Staff Slam animation. I want to like Gelmir's Fury, and I do, enough to keep it available on any Magma Sorcerer. Gelmir's Magma, the stuff left on the ground, is quite damaging, as can be the initial explosion. As good as the floor lava is, it does not delay your adversaries, and the hyper armor is non-existent. At max cast speed, it seems to come out in about 47 frames, which means you won't be catching anyone off guard with this, unless Rykard's Rancor is up. Now, you may spend a while making space, but it really needn't take that long. Due to the very high capability of the Magma spells to deny and control space, it is very easy to fall into the trap of standing in one position, endlessly casting defensive spells, only to realize you have made no progress in the invasion. The solution to this is very simply to walk forward into your spells. Smart opponents will avoid them entirely and wait for you to burn yourself out. But if someone is aggressing into your space when you have set up a Roiling Magma or a Rykard's Rancor or both, you have an obligation to hit them with everything you got. Because ultimately, getting a player into your vortex is your win condition. And you want to be positioned where your win condition is at. So ultimately, don't just put the spells down and leave them if you can safely step forward. And boy, if this build doesn't let you safely step forward over and over again, effectively pushing players down hallways, through corridors, and out into completely different levels, and knowing which spells to spam when is the entire challenge of running something like this. Which I think is rather why I like it. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to a given invasion. Though it is quite hard to handle, and I lose quite a bit fumbling with the controls rather than any weakness on the build's part. And the last of the Magma Rules that I think is at least somewhat important to think about is build well. Let yourself have some nice things on this build, because it's quite challenging. And this is why I am doing it at meta against all of the other horrible meta things you can run into. I am really trying to test the magma spells at their absolute limit, and I am happy to say that they are at least passing. So anyway, the damage threshold is too low at certain sorcery scaling values for practical invading purposes. I know you all like to use oracle bubbles or some such nonsense, but this isn't like that. In pure mage territory, you will run out of blue long before you approach victory if your staff's sorcery scaling is too low. And if your goal is to run out of blue and lose, then by all means, ignore me. Sometimes I run out of blue and lose. Not frequently, mind you. My losses are almost always due to my own impatience or ignorance, and sometimes my willingness to engage in the very worst of the worst type of invasions. You know the ones. We're not here to complain though, we're here to demonstrate. In all, you have a decently well-rounded kit that can put up a large damage zone, and then pull and poke and prod players into it. Actually, no, correction, 9. We have to talk about the complementary spells. Rock Sling at max cast speed is very funny. It always comes out. I don't think there's a weapon in the game fast enough to trade with it and not also get caught by the rocks. They have a funky projectile arc. They have damage level 3 as well. Rock Blaster I want to love so much. It's such a cool looking spell, but it's really pitiful sometimes. Now that Poise is worse, it's actually a lot better. But I always keep it in the back because I need all of the other spells towards the front. And it doesn't have the nice cancel window of Shatter Earth, so it's a little more limited in how it can trade. It doesn't particularly set you up. It doesn't really cover you. However, it will hit through the pillars in the arena, in the K-Lit arena, so you can use it for that. I did not do any duels with this, but I'm actually somewhat confident that it would work all right most of the time. Maybe I will do some and report back. Ooh, Bloodborne. What is this? Bloodborne in 2023? Almost 2024? What the hell? I sort of wish there had been a little more, sinister activity during Halloween, but it's quite alright. I know how to find invasions in Yharnam whenever I want, personally. Now, this is a horribly twinked out 43. Ignore how stupidly strong it is. I saw the Phantoms with the DLC gear, and I kept the gemmed weapon out. I would have taken it down a notch if I thought they weren't appropriately powered, but after I started taking damage, I started to realize that maybe they weren't fully gemmed, and I still killed them all anyway. Such a shame too, though they did have every opportunity. Anyway, I'm using this footage as B-roll to this fun factoid about historical geomancy, because, you know, I read sometime. We're like out of Elden Ring and Invader territory and into like trivia now, so you can leave if you want. Okay, so I get bored at work a lot, and I start looking shit up. So I spent an afternoon learning all of Renaissance magic to learn what the hell geomancy actually was, and here's the thing. It's a lot less interesting than I thought it would be. That's not fair, actually. It's very interesting. It just has nothing to do with rocks, and a lot to do with math. So basically, there's this guy in Renaissance Germany, and his name is Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa von Nettisham, but we just call him Agrippa. He wrote 3 books of occult philosophy. Yes, I read them cover to cover. No, don't ask. It's all of Renaissance magic summarized. Then Agrippa wrote a 4th book, except it wasn't actually all Agrippa. It was excerpts Agrippa had written and then were found, combined with works of other contributors, and sold as a package deal under the now well-known Agrippa's illustrious name. We are pretty sure that Agrippa wrote the Of Geomancy section of the 4th book of occult philosophy. These books are almost certainly public domain, by the way, so you can go ahead and look them up and read them yourselves if you want. Anyway, geomancy isn't really about throwing stones specifically for divining answers magically. It's about using 50/50 RNG to write binary code at random so you can make a few glyphs, then add those glyphs together to make new glyphs in a specific order and position to determine the answer to your question. Easiest way is to use a coin and go heads or tails. It takes forever. It's very lame. The way I thought it worked was that you threw some stones or sticks on the ground and their positions or angles gave you some kind of answer, but no. It's gotta be at least as accurate as astrology, so do with that what you will. So, all in all, a Renaissance Geomancer would probably have been closer to what we see in the astrologer class and the sorcerers of Raya Lucaria. But of course, we've got much stronger magical technology today and don't have to resort to these laborious, time-intensive means of divination. I can just check Twitter. If I don't see you before the holiday, have a lovely Thanksgiving if you're in America. Happy casting, mages, and don't let me keep you. See you in another one.